Ohana, a map in PvP where it is incredibly safe to expand off of Robo, specifically Robos. There's nothing really you can do to break it. It's really hard to kind of maneuver in. Blink is kind of an option, but you don't really have that much room to wiggle around because the cliffs are pretty significant.
Yeah, there's only one area, I would say. And it's like, I can blink up here, but my opponent's army is already going to be here. So it's only if they go to expand. But really think, if they go to expand, I can just always position my units right here. So I think Blink Stalkers, they're still a little bit relevant. Don't get me wrong, there are areas over here where you can barely blink out, but I think they're a little less effective than other maps. Let's say Antigua Shipyard. That's a really great map for Blink.
So let's introduce our players before we talk more about the PvP metagame. In the bottom right, we have Puzzle from Team Slayers.
No,
I was looking at your screen to make sure, because I always want to introduce the right players, and I was on WhiteRa screen, so I wasn't sure. I just want to confirm. And in the top left, we have WhiteRa, who is... He's not contracted by any team currently, right? He's not part of Duckload anymore. So he's just WhiteRa, sponsored by like TT Esports and Play M and all these other great companies. Of course, guys, these companies are in the sponsorship so that you guys can support them as well. So WhiteRa is a great guy if you ever want to support. And that will be all I'd say about that. We see WhiteRa going for very standard things in the top left, and you can see Puzzle also mirroring. Now, Ohana, let's talk a little bit more about Ohana. Since Ohana is technically a rush map, you can open for a little bit more aggressive openings. We talked to some people in the past. An earlier gateway is not necessarily bad. 11 gate can be pretty good on this map.
Yeah, actually, Naniwa. Should I go over Naniwa?
Oh, can Genius really hear what we're saying?
Naniwa has been a big... That's true. Naniwa has been a big proponent of going 11 gateway and actually scouting with a Zealot rather than going with a probe. And I was questioning this for a little bit, but he says, no, you can normally get in there, and that extra money that you get from the probe being alive for a couple minutes is actually a lot more helpful. And the Zealot comes in great timing. You just chrono boost out your Zealot and you're good to go. And you get normally a scout of everything, and you can get at least one probe. If you can get at least one probe, it's pretty much even. So that's straight from Naniwa's mouth.
Yeah. It's
I was going over and I was like, yeah, actually you're absolutely right, given the amount of time it's out. But both these players are going to probe scout, but I would say Naniwa's logic is superior in this point of view.
I think it's an important trademark of the growth of PvP, because a lot of people are really caring about early game scouting, and there's lots of ways to get it. Rotterdam has a really cool PvP build as well that is really intent on getting early game scouting. Now look at this, a Stargate. Now Phoenixes have a very interesting role in PvP. They're very good against certain things and awful against other openings. Phoenixes, of course, not necessarily good against Blink, terrible against DTs, but they are fantastic against robo openings. And of course, if you saw the PvP that MC played against Sasa earlier in the Red Bull Battlegrounds, lots of mind games with Stargate as well, between actually using it if you commit to Phoenix, not really committing to Phoenix, just getting a couple, trying to force your opponent to get into Blink Stalkers. So that kind of mind games can come into play as well.
Yeah, don't forget, it's also good against any Sentry-based openings, especially Sentry expands, because a lot of players, just like Antigua Shipyard, base their defenses off of, putting down 2 force fields, and then you're pretty good to go against any potential pushes. You can section off some units, and then obviously kill them. But Phoenix has obviously messed that up as well, because you can just pick them up very easily, and all of a sudden you're in a great position. Now, let's see if WhiteRa... Oh, actually, did I say WhiteRa is getting a Stargate? I think I did.
Either way. I knew I said Puzzle went for Stargate, but Puzzle's going to send the first Phoenix out just to get a good scout of his opponent. He's going to see 3-gate Robo, and WhiteRa originally was going to go for some kind of a roleplay, but now he has a Twilight Council start as well after seeing the Phoenix. And that's a good choice.
That's what you want to do, because there's a really nasty one-base Immortal, Sentry, Stalker, Zealot, and Phoenix timing that can hit. And if you go for an expansion right away, there's very, very low chance of you stopping that. Because remember, you don't have any Sentries if your opponent's going force fields. If your opponent's going Phoenixes. It's because Phoenixes can just pick them up immediately and just kill them in a flash. So you have to be very careful about relying on force shield to keep you defensive. And that's why, you know, he's going for this blink so he can make sure he can take them out. Also have a little bit of map presence. Having blink on the middle of the map actually gives you the ability to just move around, and you can blink away in case you do get force shield or something like that.
For now, Puzzle gonna finish his robotics, gonna start that immortal, just like you were saying. WhiteRa still trying to be very, very cautious with how he does anything. Doesn't want to give up any probes. You can see his observers moving out, and he's gonna see the robotics follow up as well. So that one base all-in could still be very much in play, and WhiteRa's gonna have to play it safe. He was thinking about expanding. Is WhiteRa gonna still expand?
Been interesting. And yes, he will. Look at that.
Ooh, a great trap from WhiteRa. He's going to pick off one of the Phoenixes. And this is great defense from WhiteRa, not shutting down any play from the Phoenix are capable of making. And also getting a good scout on his opponent. Puzzle scouts his opponent expanding. He's going to expand as well.
Okay, so he didn't actually go a lot of Phoenixes. It's only been 3 so far.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem also. WhiteRa doesn't have any indication to know that he's only going 3 or not. So it could have been a huge pressure. It could have been, you know, something like this.
WhiteRa just killed the observer.
Oh, really?
With his own observer in Phoenix. So
not bad.
Very good. WhiteRa did scout his opponent, just like we were pointing out before, but WhiteRa doesn't have good indication of his opponent's defenses just yet. He knows the Sentry, Zealots, and Immortals do exist, which hypothetically, if they get all their DPS and Stalkers, would crumble. But with good Blink Micro, anything can happen. And is WhiteRa just faking aggression while trying to hold off any kind of pressure on his natural?
It's not faking. It's more so just having map control.
Man.
I think he just wants to limit his opponent's options. So if he does push out with some sort of Immortal push, he's ready for it. Remember, it still can be a canceled Nexus Immortal push. So he can't get complacent with this.
Dude, another observer dropped. So that's 2 observers in favor of Puzzle. He's picked off yet another observer. And so the third one comes out for WhiteRa, still making it his only observer on the map. And that can play a huge key, especially with Blink Stalkers. Oh, another observer sighting. And WhiteRa loses his 3rd observer.
God.
But at the cost of perhaps 1 Phoenix. But no, Puzzle with great job. And that's exactly what you need to do.
These Phoenixes have just paid for themselves, killing 3 observers. That's so crazy, man. Observers are so expensive. You might think, no, it's only 25 minerals, 75 gas. That's a lot of gas, and that's a lot of time on the robotics facility that you're not allocating to something more, you know, juicy, more fruitful. Colossus, Immortals, etc. Oh my God, is this going to be...
Is that what you're saying? Oh, another
No,
observer
with more
went
strength,
down.
actually.
I was thinking finesse.
No,
is what you meant,
you're absolutely wrong.
Another observer draws, but this time in favor of WhiteRa. A great snipe indeed. And all of a sudden, you see that Puzzle won't be able to make another observer, at least for a while, unless he wants to take time away from his Colossus, which he doesn't, because he knows he has Robo-Time advantage. He sees, oh, the Robotics just finishing for his opponent, and he's going to harass very lightly as well.
Ooh, he can take out those sentries, by the way. He needs to be careful, but he's just going to go for the probes for now. Okay. I don't mind that. I'm killing a couple of probes. Look at it right now, 7-0. You're still pretty good. Income tab shows 46-39, so actually you needed those 7 probes. Excuse me.
Oh, a massive blink from WhiteRa, and the force fields preventing the Stalkers from moving any farther back. WhiteRa loses 2 Stalkers, potentially a 3rd, but no, he's going to immediately back off. That was a very costly scout from WhiteRa.
Yeah, and that's the big problem with going Blink Stalkers on this map, especially at this period in time, I should say. You can't really do those type of shenanigans against a Phoenix opening just yet, just because normally they do have those Immortals there, so, I mean, they're going to shut Blink Stalkers down very easily. So, unfortunate for him, but already we're seeing the disparity in supply, and I think it's just because of the openings. I mean, the openings have really given way to having an advantage for Puzzle.
And right now, Puzzle does have a couple things going into his favor. Thermal Lance will finish as well as +1. Now, +1 may not seem that big of a deal, but it is, especially with Colossus, just because it's 2 shots, it's 2 damage, which gives him a lot more AoE spread across units. So you'd be hard pressed to find a Protoss player who doesn't want upgrades onto his Colossus. We see that immediately Puzzle's moving for a 3rd base as well, which is a really good move because he's really safe defensively after taking out those stocks.
And WhiteRa, I think, will be following up with the same thing. He's just waiting until he gets his core upgrades for now.
Well, he went double Robo.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's standard off 2-base. These days, it's been standard, I should say. Still, I feel like the quality amount of units inside of Puzzle's army is much better. As you can see, these 3 extra Immortals really constitute so much DPS, and helps out with that main engagement. So it'll be a little bit difficult. Not only that, we also have to mention the lack of scouting of WhiteRa. WhiteRa just has not been able to scout due to those great Phoenixes. With good control, he was able to shut out his opponent from knowing what was going on. Think, it could have been carriers that Puzzle was going, and WhiteRa has no indication of that coming. I was just obviously being dramatic with that, but no one's going to, in their right mind, go carriers.
Ever in PvP. Who would ever go carriers in PvP?
Except there's this one really cool build, right? Where you go really no warp gate.
Oh
you go Immortal Void Ray.
Gretorp has this ridiculous PvP build where he just goes no warp gate into carriers. And you don't, on paper that sounds stupid.
Yeah.
And Gretorp did get 0-2'd by Naniwa while
I did get 0-2'd.
But it has potential. And
I beat Grandmasters on US server, so I should just replace it with Korean server.
We see Stalkers engaging and immediately disengaging. You can see WhiteRa has charge also in queue just behind Puzzle. He's just been slightly behind Puzzle because he opted to squeeze in that extra robotics. Now that's 5 Colossus in favor of WhiteRa, and Colossi numbers get really funky past 6 or 7. Where all of a sudden it doesn't necessarily become about how many Colossus, but it matters about the position you can get and how much splash you can inflict upon your opponent. But
I do want to mention one thing. Charge is about to be researched. Charge is actually really important, especially when your opponent doesn't have charge, because they tend to wrap around the army quicker, so they don't go into this line format so quickly. And it actually makes the Colossus only attack like single or only a couple Zealots at a time. So I really think that charge will help out quite a bit. And not only that, the Immortals. Don't forget, if you get flanked by the Immortals, all of a sudden the Colossus, for the defender of the Immortals, has to reposition, and that is potential DPS. Ooh, nice blink up here.
A blink onto one of the Colossus. For one of the Stalkers is not that bad of a trade whatsoever.
There he goes.
And WhiteRa is not only able to snipe the Colossus, but see what his opponent has composition-wise. I think he caught sight of the charge lots. And if not, he can click on them now and have a good, strong indication. WhiteRa immediately overstaying his welcome. You can see the Phoenix is harassing the Colossus. Wow.
Oh, watch out.
That one Phoenix. Imagine if you went Masked Phoenixes, like how much damage would you be able to inflict with the Stalkers? Right? Not even there.
But I do want to mention now the Archons help out as well, as the Archons are another layer you have to deal with. They are range 4, I believe. Is that right?
Range
3. What am I thinking? Oh my gosh. Range 4 Archons, so sick. But that extra layer actually makes it a lot harder because, again, the Colossus have to go through the Zealot layer and then the Archon layer, then the Sentry Immortal layer, and then finally the Colossus. So there's a lot of layers to go through. Whereas WhiteRa is really only like one. It's Zealots. And
he's got some Stalkers, so he's got a couple layers.
Yeah, that's true. But he's not the onion I know he can be.
Yeah, he's more like a trident piece of gum, where they have just that one layer in the
Correct.
gummy. And I'm like, dude, this is not layers at all. It's the worst false advertising ever. But WhiteRa is now approaching max. +3 is finishing for Puzzle before WhiteRa even has +2. That is going to be mighty fearsome, especially with Archons against the Zealots. They'll be able to absolutely annihilate them. And the Colossus. WhiteRa has his units completely sectioned off. You can see the charge was already working on some of those units. WhiteRa is going to try to back up and set up a stronger concave. And Puzzle has to be really cautious. He could be walking into a trap, or he could be walking into the greatest catch of all time. Colossi completely exposed without the charge loss. WhiteRa trying to kite back as much as possible. His Colossus advantage all of a sudden disappearing. WhiteRa has the Stalkers also engaging on the Zealots, not necessarily blinking forward. He's trying to flank with his own Zealots, but look at the decimation of the Protoss army, and Puzzle rolling over WhiteRa. GG, well played. Puzzle takes game number 2 in very dominating fashion. Strong understanding of PvP and great execution.
The engagement did it for WhiteRa. I mean, he was behind, I think, from that game, but the engagement really solidified everything. When your Colossus are blindsided like that and they have to move out of the way before actually attacking, well, you know your opponent's going to take a massive lead.
Yeah, that +3 also did not
do anything in that battle,
just letting you know. I'm just teasing. Guys, let's look at the closer let's take a closer look at what just happened. Now, the big thing is the first damage applied was immediately to Colossus. Now they have to spend time walking away from the battle.
Exactly, and
while
that's
the other Colossus are shooting.
like
2 shots.
2 shots over your opponent. That's a lot of DPS.
+3 advantage.
It's a lot of DPS going to all those Zealots. That's probably a good 500, 600 damage before your opponent can actually do any Colossus sprays. By that time, you lose all your Colossus. GG, well played. Oop.
GG, well played. And Puzzle moves into a very convincing first place in his group. Well, MC's still on his tail. Morrow falls just a little bit, and Polt makes up ground. But again, we'll wrap everything up actually with division standings and daily recaps, predictions, also announcements, and maybe even some bonus features. Who knows? But the possibilities will be announced after this. We want to thank iBuyPower and GameMinder, the smartphone application and the pre-assembled PC company. Check them out at handleabra.com for GameMinder and iBuyPower.com.